This episode is sponsored in part by our friends at Fortinet. Fortinet's partnership with AWS is a better together combination that ensures your workloads on AWS are protected by best-in-class security solutions powered by comprehensive threat intelligence and more than 20 years of cybersecurity experience. Integrations with key AWS services simplify security management, ensure full visibility across environments, and provide broad protection across your workloads and applications. Visit them at AWS Reinforce to see the latest trends in cybersecurity on July 25th to 26th at the Boston Convention Center. Just go over to the Fortinet booth and tell them Corey Quinn sent you and watch for the flinch. My thanks again to my friends at Fortinet. Hello and welcome to Last Week in AWS, the podcast. This week is both my birthday, more to come on that, and AWS Reinforce, which I am pointedly not attending. Let's figure out what happened last week in the wide world of AWS. Here we go. Amazon Bracket SDK adds support for near real-time cost tracking. At last, an AWS service offers near real-time cost tracking. This is the grail of cloud economics. I'm just disheartened that it apparently requires a quantum computer to do it. New Amazon EBS Elastic Volumes automated performance settings make it even easier to modify volumes and save costs. I want to see a projected cost impact of its changes first, because I can imagine a couple of scenarios where this does customers no favors at all, but I haven't had a chance to model any of that out yet. The AI Use Case Explorer is now available. Great, there's now a tool to solve the actual business problem of leadership wants to do something that we can call AI, but we have no blessed clue just what the hell that might be at our company. This is surprisingly insightful of AWS to provide. AWS Lambda announces support for Attribute-Based Access Control, or ABAC. Awesome. I can control access based upon attributes of my Lambda functions. Two notable attributes of the Lambda functions I write is that they're both overwrought as well as shitty. AWS Repost introduces community-generated articles. If you want to do volunteer work and write articles for no money, I guess you do you, but there's a reason that I periodically feature guest authors on the Last Week in AWS blog. I will also point out that every last one of them is paid for their work, although some do choose to donate that to a nonprofit due to conflict of interest issues with their employers. AWS Single Sign-On adds support for AWS Identity and Access Management Customer Managed Policies. At last, suddenly, I can map SSO users to the same management structure I was using for IAM roles, and this is a great thing. Best practices from Crayon for building an agile cloud center of excellence with AWS. Most of the business cases I've seen for an agile cloud center of excellence were indeed written in Crayon. How we sent an AWS snow cone into orbit. I just assumed that it had hitched a ride on the managed NAT gateway bill and asked politely to be dropped off as it passed the ISS. Introducing Amazon Code Whisperer in the AWS Lambda console in preview. I'm horrified at the idea of authoring and editing a Lambda function within the console for anything that's even slightly beyond a quick typo fix. Meanwhile, I still can't edit a small text file in the S3 console. Developers are responsible for more than ever these days, some of which they're even aware of. Not just the code they write, but also the containers and the cloud infrastructure their applications run on. And a big part of that responsibility is application security, from code to cloud. And that's where Snyk comes in. Snyk finds and automatically fixes vulnerabilities in developers' code, open source dependencies, containers, and infrastructure as code. It works closely with industry-leading technologies like AWS to meet developers where they work, right in the CLI, IDEs, repos, and pipelines. Deploy on AWS, secure with Snyk. Learn more at snyk.co/AWS. That's snyk.co/AWS. Or meet the sneakers. Really? We call them sneakers now? All right. Meet the sneakers yourself at AWS Reinforce or your local AWS Summit. My thanks to Snyk for their continuing support of this ridiculous podcast. simplifying serverless best practices with AWS Lambda Power Tools for TypeScript. This solves the problem of bringing power tools to a language which likes to periodically pull a Twitter by yelling at you for things that could theoretically be taken slightly out of context. Understanding AWS Lambda scaling and throughput. This might be the most in-depth explanation of a topic that's mostly only understood by getting it painfully wrong a bunch of times first. Create a notification for changes to Amazon Workspace's gateway ranges. Oh, lovely. Surprise IP address changes have a way of just absolutely ruining people's weeks. At least now there's a way to get notified about it. Keep your AWS resources when you rename an AWS CloudFormation stack. This is an advanced level solution, and reading the depth that it requires means the answer on how you rename a CloudFormation stack remains you don't. You don't rename a CloudFormation stack. 4 ways to buy cloud with federal year-end funds. There's usually a bit more discretion and class involved in messaging. You have leftover budget, it's use it or lose it, so hurry up and give it to us before it evaporates. Respect to AWS for the transparency here. And finally, Amazon open sources new Cloudscape design system. I used their older Northstar system to build out hasIAMfailedopenyet.com, but the Cloudscape system looks like a nice refinement of that into something that's better suited for production. It's also really well suited for aggressive shitposts mocking the AWS console design aesthetic. More to come on this in the future, without a doubt. And that's what happened last week in AWS. There is so much more to come this week. Stay tuned.
This has been a Humble Pod production. Stay humble.